Wait, so Volibear sucks? Well, yes, but not really. Hello Summoners, what's going on? My name is Irene and I'm here with what we promised earlier last week, our mid-patch update. There were a ton of unanswered questions from the beginning of the patch that our analysts are finally able to answer now that we've had time to look through the data. Like always, we're following up on everything we mentioned in our initial patch rundown and also updating our tier lists to better prepare you guys to find success on Summoner's Rift. However, there is one thing I want to tell you guys. We have a Discord community as well as a subreddit that we want you to be a part of. Make sure to check out the description for links to enjoy either of them. Also, here's our question of the day. What are you most excited for in regards to League? I know that I'm most excited for the removal of the promotion series because for some reason this arbitrary increase in ELO is gated by a 75% win rate. That makes absolutely no sense because when you have all your divisions done and you're in Challenger/Grandmaster, you actually only need a 51% win rate in order to increase, which is strange. But you know what? Instead of that, let's say aside from champion reworks, we were promised some new champions this year. Now aside from balance, you have to admit that Set is a pretty fun champion to play as. I'm hoping that the following champion releases are just as satisfying, and that's what I'm looking forward to most in League. Let me know your answers down in the comments below. With that said, let's jump into the video. Starting things off, let's run through the top lane. Gangplank received a small buff this patch, and it's time we let you guys know where he stands now. Overall, the buff helped, but not by much. For now, he'll remain in the B tier. It is worth noting though that his win rate has jumped significantly in Challenger since the last patch. These small buffs are definitely noticeable at the highest level of play. But for most players, some extra attack speed simply isn't enough to make him a strong champion at their level of play. Interestingly, most players are still building Sterix Gauge, choosing the raw health over Phantom Dancer, which still leaves Gangplank prone to assassination. Now let's talk about some shifts on our tier list. The most notable one is this. Garen is once again in the S+ tier. He wasn't gone for long, and I'm sure there's a lot of mixed feelings towards him. Some of us are happy, some of us are not. Personally, I really don't like Garen because his simplicity doesn't make it very satisfying to outplay him because he's pressing a couple of buttons, running at you, and you can kite him, but if he ever reaches you, it's donezo time. He's fun in the I wanna watch my enemies suffer kind of way, but I judge Garen players pretty heavily. Those Zeal item buffs helped a ton as Garen players often build either Static Shiv or Phantom Dancer as core parts of their build. Some extra movement speed on a Juggernaut is quite terrifying, and his win rates have shot up since last patch. We've also moved Vayne into the A tier because her win rate has also increased noticeably as a result of the Zeal buffs. But she also received a direct buff to her scaling through more damage on her Q. Both her power as a bot laner and top laner increased this patch, and to reflect this, our analysts believe she belongs in the A tier for now. Should Bruisers and Juggernauts fall out of the meta, it's likely that Vayne will too. She's a great champion to keep several meta champions in check, but at the same time is an extremely risky pick to lock in. Alright, it's the moment that you've all been waiting for. Where does Volibear stand? Our analysts have placed him in the B tier. And no, it doesn't stand for bear. This B rating is honestly quite generous if you know where his statistics place him. In Platinum and higher, Volibear started this patch with a 38% win rate in the top lane. That is an enormous yikes. But don't be so quick to call him weak and underpowered. He is new after all, and players are still figuring him out. Remember that Fiddlesticks was in the same boat, but look at him now. On top of this, he also received a hotfix buff, meaning that he'll be stronger than before. And there's no doubting it, Volibear holds incredible power and potential, but his strengths aren't in the same places as before. He used to be a Juggernaut that dealt a ton of damage, just like all the other ones. He flipped you, pressed R, and just beat you up. Now, he's a little tankier than before. His W provides a ton of sustain in extended fights, and his ultimate is easily one of the most impactful ones in the game. Volibear's power now lies more in his utility, rather than his direct fighting strength. Honestly, you guys are going to have to trust us on this one. His win rate will climb as players figure out what to do with him. If you want more information about new champions, I definitely suggest you check out one of our other videos, where we talk about why new champions are all broken upon release. It's definitely some interesting food for thought, so I definitely give it a watch if OP new champions are getting on your nerves. Finally, let's do a quick rundown of our S+ and S tiers. In the S+ tier, we have Darius, Fiora, Wukong, Maokai, and Garen. It's a pretty large S+ tier, but that's because it's pretty tough to be able to say that one or even two specific champions are the most broken. These 5 champions are all so strong, especially in low elo. Darius and Garen are incredibly powerful duelists, and with how scrappy solo queue is, they always manage to get fed and carry their games. The other picks carry in their own ways. Maokai and Wukong provide incredible crowd control, while Fiora can control the pace of games with her ridiculous split push pressure. In the S tier, we have Mordekaiser, Shen, Kled, Jax, Urgot, Nasus, and Tryndamere, who are just a hair weaker than the champions we just mentioned. That wraps up the top lane, so next, let's run through the jungle. Alright, it's time to follow up on the jungle changes first. Graves got gutted. Nah, I'm kidding, he's still OP, just not as OP as before. Quite literally, he had way too much firepower before his nerfs this patch, and he's finally come a little bit closer to being balanced. He's not there yet, but our analysts have moved Graves down to the S tier. For now. He's still a ridiculous champion with a stacked kit. While he is weaker in the late game now, he's still a worthy duelist in the early and mid game. Next, let's talk about Fiddlesticks. Like our analysts have been saying, Fiddlesticks has been broken, and yes, if you forgot, Riot just buffed him. Buffing a champion that's already broken is actually pretty ridiculous, but hey, at least now they'll have even more reason to nerf him soon. Fiddlesticks now holds the sole spot in the S+ tier, not because the other S tier champions are weak, but because he stands a cut above the rest. Unlike the top lane, our analysts can confidently say and believe that it's okay to denote Fiddlesticks as the one jungler you need to play this patch. Hecarim also received a buff this patch. His win rate has skyrocketed up a whole 1.5%, and his onslaught in the jungle has started once again. More damage, that's all he needed. It's not a shocker, but like our analysts predicted, Hecarim is still in a spot where he's not exactly S tier just yet. He's close, and if you enjoy playing him, go ahead and lock him in. Definitely not a weak pick by any means. Hecarim's high damage output combined with some decent crowd control and high sustain make him a very valuable pick in nearly any team composition as long as he doesn't fall too far behind. Now, like in the top lane, Volibear has been placed in the B tier. His win rate isn't much better in the jungle, and actually it's practically the same. We expect it to continue increasing following his hotfixes, as his ability to clear the jungle was directly buffed as well. Alright, now we already talked about the S+ tier, so let's run through the S tier instead. In our S tier, we still have Lee Sin, Olaf, Rek'Sai, Shaco, Trundle, Nunu, Elise, Warwick, Kayn, Evelynn, Nidalee, Wukong, Zac, and Graves. Trundle in particular has seen his win rate climb drastically. In a roundabout way, our analysts believe that this ties directly into the Graves nerfs. He was and still is an oppressive jungler, but he was doing a little too well versus tanks. Picking a tank was much riskier because of how dominant Graves was, but they're in a much better spot now. Tanks being in a better spot means that Trundle is also in a better spot. The final thing my analysts wanted me to tell you guys is this. If you're diamond or higher, Nidalee is OP. No elaboration, that's actually all that they told me. It sounds like someone's salty, but okay. We heavily suggest that if you're in elite levels of play, that you either pick her up or ban her because of how oppressive she's become. The buff she received on patch 10.10 is still causing her win rate to climb even to this moment. That covers the jungle, now let's move on to the mid lane next. With only 2 balance changes to mid lane champions this patch, this should go by pretty quickly. First, let's talk about Talon. Like our analysts predicted, those nerfs to Talon sustain left a dent on his insane win rate. But also like they predicted, he's still pretty OP. Talon's win rate in Platinum and higher dropped by a 0.5%, but still remains comfortably above 52%. These nerfs were not enough to suddenly make him weak. Talon remains a contested assassin with a ton of agency over his games. His matchups, especially against other assassins, are a bit harder than before, and for example, his win rate in the Zed matchup has dropped by 2%, indicating that those nerfs have definitely had an effect on his laning phase. For now, Talon will still remain in our S tier. Next up are the Syndra nerfs. They actually hurt a lot more than we expected, but she'll still remain in the A tier for now. Syndra's win rate has dropped about a whole %, which is surprising since she didn't lose any damage. The 2-second cooldown increase on her E, however, leaves her more vulnerable to ganks and also means that one of her most important trading tools can't be used as often. In a way, this is actually a double whammy. Syndra players have to use their E more conservatively to avoid jungle pressure, and on top of this, they can't use it as often because it takes longer for it to come off cooldown. But like our initial patch rundown, Syndra still remains in the A tier. But joining her in the A tier, however, we have Lux. You buff support Lux, you also buff mid Lux. There's no way around it. Lux's win rate has increased by an astounding 3% in high elo and 2% overall since last patch. I'm actually kind of in a bind here since I know most players rage at her very existence, but I've got to say, she is really good, guys. Her support win rate also increased significantly, which it should have, as this was the whole intent of her buff this patch. Honestly though, a lot of people, and it looks like Riot, didn't expect to see her win rate skyrocket like this in the mid lane as a result though. Utility definitely wins games, guys. Don't undervalue it. By simply increasing Lux's slow duration on her E, she's been finding a lot more success. Okay, now with that said, let's run through our S+ and S tiers. Our S+ tier features a new member, but probably not for long. We now have Fizz, Vladimir, and Yasuo. Yasuo was already an S tier pick, but those Zeal buffs made him an even stronger pick this patch. More movement speed is actually more OP on Yasuo than you think. He already dashes a million times, and now he runs faster too. The win rate of Yasuo has increased by a whole % at all ranks since last patch. 2% movement speed is all it took. Our analysts have been saying it for a while now, but seriously, do not underestimate movement speed. It's definitely subjective for each champion, but movement speed is crucial to many of them, including Yasuo. His passive charges up based on how much he moves around, and honestly, movement speed is all relative. It doesn't matter if I have 600 movement speed and you have 650, or I have 800 and you have 850. The only thing that matters is that you are faster than me. And that's what Yasuo cares about. As long as he is faster than more champions on average now because of the increase in movement speed, that means he's going to catch you eventually. Abuse him while you can because he's already scheduled for a nerf next patch. Following that list though, in the S tier are Kassadin, Katarina, Echo, Cassiopeia, Diana, Zed, Sylas, Galio, Talon, and Annie. Like last patch, Annie is still popping off, and our analysts are reassuring us that she is here to stay unless she gets nerfed soon. She's pretty sleeper OP because players tend to really underestimate her. Also, a lot of people kind of hate playing her since she's so brain dead and easy. Hey man, if you win those games, what's it matter if your opponents are flaming you? If somebody's upset, you just open the all chat, hit them with the "you mad cause you bad," or you just enjoy the satisfaction of knowing that somewhere else on this planet, your opponent is fuming. Moving forward though, let's run through the bottom lane. Much to our analysts' surprise, the relative strength of bot laners remains about the same as before. Since almost every marksman received the same buff, it makes some sense that there weren't any major shifts. Overall, there were only 3 shifts that they had to make to our tier list. Those were to Syndra, Jhin, and Yasuo. But you can probably already guess what happened to them. Let's first talk about traditional bot laners. The biggest hit, however, was to Lucian. As a notorious lane bully, it's a rather unfortunate turn of events for him when literally everyone he has to lane versus is a bit stronger or tankier than before. His win rate has dropped by almost a whole % since last patch, and our analysts accurately predicted that he would need to drop a tier. He feels like he's a little better in the solo lane now, but still has a place in the bottom lane for sure. Since we talked about Lucian, we might as well talk about the other marksmen who received alternative changes this patch. Vayne is the champion you probably need to pay the least attention to. Her win rate hasn't really changed at all. Sure, her opponents are a little tankier than before, but she's still doing just fine with the extra damage she received on her tumble, and she was doing max % health true damage anyway, so having more HP actually doesn't matter versus her. Next is Kalista. Kalista's win rate went up in high elo and went down in low elo. The lack of a mana cost on her W makes it so much easier to utilize Kalista's utility. She's able to more reliably provide vision, but this is more valuable in high elo than it is in low elo. For low elo players, the most notable change is that other bot laners are tankier now and harder to kill as a result. Unfortunately for Tristana, she got the short end of the stick as well. Although she received an attack speed buff, it doesn't really matter that much since her late game was already so strong. She received a buff she didn't need, while her opponents are all in a better place to fight her. Tristana is also a pretty powerful all-in champion, capable of jumping on her enemies and attempting to detonate her E. If her opponents are able to survive this burst damage, however, they can easily turn fights around after waiting out Tristana's Q, which is her attack speed steroid. Kai'Sa, on the other hand, has seen her win rate jump up by 0.5% at all levels of play. Like our analysts predicted, those buffs were huge, and they expect her to become a staple pick in professional games as well as high elo once again. Now, let's talk about those tier list shifts. We do want to note that Yasuo has been moved up to the S+ tier, while Syndra has been moved down to the B tier. Just like in the mid lane, the various balance changes that they have received shifted their power levels. Syndra's win rate dropped in the bottom lane, while Yasuo's increased. Thus, our S+ tier for this patch consists of Varus, Ezreal, Kai'Sa, and Yasuo. If nothing else sticks with you in this bottom lane section, please just remember these 3 words. Varus is overpowered. And yes, overpowered is just a single word, it's not 2, I looked it up. Abuse him before he gets nerfed. Well, that is, if you can actually pick him. He's banned out so often that it can be quite challenging to actually lock him in. Following up in the S tier are Vayne, Caitlyn, Jinx, Draven, Misfortune, and the newly admitted Jhin. Jhin is a marksman who consistently builds 2 upgraded Zeal items. Thus, he double dips on the buffs the items received this patch. He's even faster than before and is able to kite opponents more effectively from this patch onward. Finally, let's wrap things up with the supports. Like we mentioned earlier, those Lux buffs were huge. Lux's support win rate spiked upward, and our analysts believe she's here to stay in the B tier. The extra utility makes her a more impactful support than before, and she's begun to see a lot more play as support. We're keeping our eyes on her because she may increase more over time as people start picking her back up. Next is Janna. Her win rate has dropped a little bit more than 0.5% this patch as a result of the nerfs to her W. Her ability to 1v2 lanes isn't as present as it was in previous patches, which is good news for most of us. However, Janna remains as an S tier pick. In spite of her win rate dropping, it still remains at an impressive 51.5% in Platinum and higher. Her overall win rate didn't drop as much as lower elo players don't feel these nerfs as heavily, because they probably don't poke that much in lane. Overall, our analysts actually did a pretty good job with compiling the support tier list during our initial patch rundown. There's only one change to the support tier list, and that's the fact that Soraka has made it into the S+ tier. Marksmen are a little tankier than before, and that means that they're able to survive just long enough for one more heal from Soraka. The extra health from that single heal cascades into the possibilities for even more subsequent heals, and I'm sure you guys understand the picture already. Soraka was on the cusp of the S+ tier anyway, and this patch was that final nudge she needed to finally break into it. Thus, our support S+ tier consists of Leona, Blitzcrank, Senna, and Soraka, while our S tier consists of Thresh, Nautilus, Morgana, Lulu, Bard, Nami, Yuumi, and Janna. To conclude our support section, we have some words of advice from our analysts for the remainder of this patch. If you're not comfortable with your macro play and roaming, stick to Enchanter supports for now. They feel extremely reliable and consistent. Champions like Lulu and Janna provide a ton of value to basically any team composition, and like we said before, that consistency and reliability. You don't need to make insane mechanical outplays to do your job with these champions, and can have just as much impact as playmaking supports by the mid to late game. For those of you who prefer to play a more proactive game, you can continue to play aggressive supports as they still feel fine in spite of those marksman buffs. That concludes our 10.11 mid-patch update. Thanks again for watching, guys. Once again, we hope that we can connect with you all and continue to provide more content for you. Check out that link in the description to join our Discord, and also check out our website. We have tons of content as well as coaches who are willing to help you improve your gameplay. Until next time, best of luck on the Rift, Summoners.